K-12 school. And I think I will interpret that to mean East End committee members. Because it says community members, but I think they meant East End community, the planning group that made that worked on this plan.
So there were two meetings where a couple of parents attended. There were the private advisory meetings. At the public meetings, there were 45 members from the community that were there at Westinghouse and 60 members at Peabody. And so there were significant input from parents and families into this plan because we took that input back to our community advisory meeting and made sure that it was actually included in the work that we did. So we actually had amazing turnouts in this room. In fact, it was standing room only in this room, and we had the meeting at Peabody where we had 60 people, and we actually have the rosters for those folks, and we sent them emails, thank yous for coming. We had significant parental input into this plan. And so if that is the import of the question, I'm confident we actually addressed many of the concerns that were brought forth from those meetings.
Next question, on what exactly will the board be voting? Peabody, Westinghouse changes only, Oliver?
So there are 7, so A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 7 different lines in the resolution that the board will be voting on. They will be made public at agenda review, but they involve the single gender academies here at Westinghouse. It involves and all of the things that we talked about this evening, the new schools that will be here, the new school at Faison, the reconfiguration of Lincoln K-5. That's one of the items. It will address the movement of the early childhood program from Homewood Early Childhood Center to Faison. That's the second item. It will address the early college model at Oliver. That's the third item. And then there are ancillary things with respect to fiscal notes that will also be addressed in those. But the resolution has been written and it will be forwarded out to the board members later this week. There are 7 items that are there, but the plan that was presented on June the 25th at that meeting and July 21st regarding the Teachers Academy at Bashir and King will all be in that resolution. And so those are the votes that will be coming before the board on August the 25th of this month.
Excuse me, Peabody?
So the closure of Peabody is one of those resolutions, and we are simply reaffirming the timeline that the board put forth for the movement of the Obama ISA program into Peabody, where they said that the new site would be the home of the IB school beginning in 12-13.
Just to reference back, agenda review is August 18th at maybe 6 o'clock. Agenda review is Wednesday, August 18th at 6 o'clock. Next question. At this time, the neighborhood is not totally attractive to many people. How are you going to make it more attractive to all? Crime?
Say that we are as attentive to that as we are to anything, because we are saying the paramount concern is the safety and security of every child that attends schools in the Pittsburgh Public Schools. And if the youngsters tell me, Mr. Lopez, once I get into the building, everything is cool. It's when I have to navigate the waters to and from school that I get concerned. Mr. Lopez, I know the cuts in East Liberty. I don't know the cuts in Homewood. We need to make sure that things are safe. This is what the kids are telling me. Once I get into the building, I'm going to be okay, because we know that when you come to school, we know what school is for. The issue for us is to mobilize as many people around this issue as possible, because in truth, the neglect of the homes around the school is not the school's issue. It is a community issue that we have to involve as many people in as possible and mobilize as many folk as possible around these buildings to actually help us to do the work that we're charged to do. I will say this one more thing. And we talked about this a lot, and in some of our meetings around the Home and Children's Village. When kids walk into a building or out of a building, it is a reflection of them. And we have to make the space surrounding our schools as friendly as the inside of schools are supposed to be for our kids, so that they can actually make meaning of their lives as opposed to the chaos that surrounds them. And that's the key in what we're trying to do. We are really talking with everybody possible around this. I just want you to know, one of the statements, is it 75% or 80% of the properties that are in Homewood right now actually are either tax liened or tax cheated back to the city. We know that. And so we are working as diligently as possible to figure out around this building and around Faison Primary and around the Crescent building how to make spaces that are meaningful and valuable to children as they walk in and out of the house. In Pittsburgh, Peabody and Pittsburgh Oliver are the schools that have the lowest take for eligibility for the Pittsburgh Promise. 46% of the students that graduate from Pittsburgh Westinghouse, 47% of the students that graduate from Pittsburgh Peabody, and 49% of the students that graduate from Pittsburgh Oliver are the lowest yield in the district because our students don't have a 2.5 GPA. They come to school less than 90% of the time. So absolutely, this will increase, if it's done properly, the scholarship opportunities that are available for our students, because they will be attended to the ABCs of education: attendance, behavior, course credits, and course failures. That's what knocks our kids out of the scholarship opportunity. The Pittsburgh Promise currently has $10,000 made available. Is that right, Mr. Salinas?
Mm-hmm.
Starting 2012.
Starting with 2012, the graduating class of 2012, $10,000 available per year per student. And because our kids are not attentive to the ABCs of education, attendance, behavior, course credit, and course failure, they are opting themselves out of that opportunity. And so our desires are to increase the number of kids who can take. We literally left 54% of the money available to us on the table at Westinghouse in 2009. 54%. That means more than half of the kids that left this building were not eligible for the Pittsburgh Promise. That's when it was a 2.25. Same. So the schools that are in the north and east of the city that are not magnets are predominantly African American. It is not something that the district did. It is a neighborhood issue, and it is about the way that people have chosen their living patterns. Thus, we have chosen to educate the children that show up every day, as opposed to trying to create something that, in fact, does not meet the needs of the students that we're charged to serve in the buildings where they're educated. I said that at the very beginning of the conversation, and I will continue to say that. It was a clear discussion at the very beginning of our East Region Advisory Committee whether or not that would be, what would the charge be? And the charge that we determined was to educate the children that show up every day best. Then, in fact, we will attract other folk who want to come back to a good school. It is not about trying to create something new. It's about educating the children that we're charged to serve every day.
Next question, and to address part of it, I promise you I read what I was given.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
My online question was not asked as posted. So the answer of sports in 6 to 12 is based upon principals' communications?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, and more.
6 basketball teams do not fit in one gym! Exclamation point. Certain people who are principals of current 6 to 12s, who I will not name, just because of my own preference. They are written here, but I'd rather not name people. But certain principals do not communicate. And just to note, these people's boss is about to get handed a piece of paper, so it is being communicated.
That's a question mark.
So the issue is 6 basketball teams and 1 gym.
Yeah.
So at Berkeley High School, where I was principal, we had a 9th grade squad, a JV squad, and a varsity squad for males and females, and 1 gym. We worked out the schedule, and it made sense, and everyone was able to practice in the time that they needed. The point is that it can work. The problem is that we did not work to do it well.
Just really quickly, I will read a question that has already been, I think, answered. Are there incentives for teachers to teach at historically low-performing schools? I believe that was asked and answered already.
Not totally.
Okay, I'm sorry. I will read it then. Are there incentives for teachers to teach at historically low-performing schools?
That is not a part of the current curriculum directive. With the opening of the K-8 in 2005 and the 6-12 model, and 6-12 models that were began to be opened in 2008-9 and last year 2009-10. The comprehensive middle school and every piece of research that talks about this talks about the comprehensive middle schools as this limbo for children where they don't see an end and they don't see where they're going. And so the 6-12 model is born out of a continuity of programming model that we should be fostering in all of our schools. So the K-8 is the continuity model, bringing K to 8th grade so that the adults in the building own and respect and respond to those children and families for 9 years. You can't say, I don't know this child if they've been with you for 9 years. Similarly, what happens in high schools when they get to the 9th grade is that teachers say, oh, they should have taught them that in middle school. That's what they always say. So we're dealing with that issue. No, your colleague down the hall that you need to deal with should have taught them that last year, or we should have continuity of programming 6 to 12. You meet kids where they are and you give them a known endpoint, which is the Pittsburgh Promise. That's what the 6 to 12 model does, and it's really akin to the same philosophy around K to 8.
So the whole district is going 6 to 12 shortly?
I'm sorry.
You know what this is, a community meeting, technically.
So the second question was, how will the new curriculum foster conflict resolution to help these communities, which will come together, strive a new standard of academic excellence instead of repping their hood? So it is about making sure that the adults and the youngsters in the building have conversations about where and what is important. One of the biggest issues that we talked about in the programs that I've been dealing with at OBB, talking with the kids the last 2 weeks, and talking with the kids in the AMP program, is that the square of land that you seek to rep, you don't own it anyway. So I don't understand what that's about. And one of the conversations that the kids had was, well, that's the only thing we got. We don't have anything else. That's what a youngster said. And so we as the adults have to really get into their heads and listen to what they're saying, as opposed to simply telling them what to do. We tell them too much and don't listen enough and help them to make different choices. And so we've literally been talking about how, truthfully, you actually have a mindset that is enslaving you on your block. So they may have taken the chains away, but they're telling you that you own something that you don't even own. And so the world actually is what you own. And we are having those conversations and helping youngsters see that choice as opposed to seeing the other choice, which is deleterious to their health and well-being every single day.
Mr. Lopez, I need to have a process check. It is 7:30, the time you committed to. I have